Greetings, Taku Faithful. Thank you for joining me again this week. Once again, it's Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, and I'm here to bring you all yet again another Arrow episode review right here on Otaku Assemble. Weekly, as always, I'm here to bring you the latest in this week's Arrow episode review, and this is my review of Season 1, Episode 17, entitled The Huntress Returns. Now, general thoughts on this week's episode. Pretty damn good episode. To be perfectly honest with you all, pretty damn good episode. Now, I'll admit, I could be somewhat biased towards this episode, and there are two reasons for that, and both of which pertain to the Huntress. Number one, the Huntress has always been one of my favorite DC characters. Period. Not just female characters, but DC characters. Pretty much since I was introduced to the character back with the good old Justice League Unlimited animated series, I've been a fan of hers ever since. So that's number one. And then number two, because I missed out on the first two episodes with her earlier in this season, because I still haven't seen those episodes. Since I missed out on those episodes, this was actually the first episode I got to see her in. So I really did, enjoy that and had a good time seeing her on screen. Now, to get to more objectively speaking, no, I thought this was a really good episode. For the same reason that many of the later episodes, the same comment I made about those is the fact that I like how the series has managed to manage all of these different stories occurring at the same time. I mean, just in this episode alone, we had somewhat of a, I guess you could call it somewhat of a love triangle, but not in the traditional sense, between Oliver, Helena, and McKenna. So we had that going on. We also had the tension between Oliver and Tommy. And then by extension, well, no, you can comment on this. It's not as much, but there was a bit of tension between Oliver and Diggle, and that had to do with Helena. And then, of course, tension really got high when Felicity got involved, because what Oliver was trying to prevent from happening, when he kicked Felicity out of the headquarters earlier in the episode, ended up biting him in the ass later on. So then we had that. And then, of course, we had, since we were talking about Tommy, we had Tommy and Laurel, the tension going on in their relationship. Then Laurel, her dad, and her mom, the tension going on there. And then Thea and her relationship as it's developing with Roy. And then, of course, and then we kind of ended on somewhat of a sour note with Detective Lance and his reaction to what happened to McKenna, which I think that's going to come back later in this season, and I'll get to that later in this review when I talk about that in a bit more detail. So we had all these, plus the flashback. So we had all these things going on in the same episode, and I've made this comment in previous episodes. I like how they're managing to take care and to deal with all these stories simultaneously. And it's working pretty well so far. So, to the cast and crew of Arrow, you guys just keep up the good work with that. Now, things I want to talk about. First off, let's just get this out of the way now, since I was already fanboying earlier about it. Let's just talk about Helena. Let's talk about the Huntress, okay? First and foremost, I like how she is being depicted in the series, because I think, oh my God, I love this song. Something to Remind Me by Stain. Love it. Anyway, but I like how they're depicting her in the series so far, because when news about the Huntress being in Arrow first started surfacing back when they were still doing casting for it, and news was coming out like last summer about it and stuff like that, I was curious about how they were going to do it, because Huntress is a character who in her publication history has actually fulfilled 3 roles, and that is hero, anti-hero, well, actually 4 roles, technically, if you want to think about it. Hero, anti-hero, anti-villain, and villain. She's fulfilled all those roles at some point in time since her inception in the source material, in the comics. And so I like how what I thought would have been either the hero or the anti-hero depiction has shifted to the anti-villain or villain depiction. I like how the way they're playing her and the way they're developing her relationship with Oliver, and how though they're both vigilantes, they're still on separate ends of the fence, on opposite ends of the fence. So what we've gotten is pretty much, she is the Catwoman to Oliver's Batman. She is the Selena Kyle to Oliver's Bruce Wayne. They've created that type of dynamic, which is very interesting, and I like how they did it. I also like the fact that they chose that character instead of just having Oliver develop a relationship with a character who's just straight up a villain. You see what I'm saying? I like how, because of her potential for good or for ill, that conflict about doing the right thing, about justice versus vengeance, that all comes into play, and it's much more significant because she could be what Oliver is. She could be on his side of the fence, but everything else is preventing her from doing so. So I don't think I would have found it hard for them to pull that off with another character. That's just my personal opinion. I think it's very effective with that character. Now, what else do I want to talk about? Might as well talk about McKenna. Just get that out of the way, because I'm actually gonna miss her character, because I'm a fan of the actress. I like her work. Hell, she's actually not even half bad to look at, you know. Yeah, I know that was completely shallow. Anywho, I'm actually going to miss her character, and mainly because I liked that idea. You all will remember when I first mentioned when they first started the relationship between Oliver and McKenna, I liked that idea that Oliver would be dating the person who's responsible for catching the Archer or the Hood or whatever you want to call him. But I like that. You know, Oliver's dating the woman responsible for catching him. That bait and switch, that cat and mouse game that they've been flirting with so far, we're going to lose that now, and I'm going to miss that aspect of the series. I really am. Yeah, gonna miss that. And now I'm going to get into a bit more detail about what I was talking about with Sergeant Lance and his reaction to McKenna leaving, pretty much the scene where he's clearing off her desk. I'm curious if the writers are actually going to build on top of this, but remember what happened with that situation. He told her to stand down, to wait for reinforcements, and of course she went in without any backup, and she got injured, and now she's having to, you know, go through rehab and whatnot, and she's having to leave. She's having to leave Starling City PD, right? Well, don't you think that kind of put Sergeant Lance in a bit of a position to where he would probably blame himself? Think about it. He was the one who brought her on board to start going after the Hood, start going after Oliver. And so, now granted, yes, she disobeyed his order, but at the same time, he wasn't there to prevent her injury. And you can kind of see it on his face of him losing someone that he might feel responsible for that predicament. And I think it is also very telling when you compound that on top of the new revelation that has come to light about Sarah possibly still being alive. I'm hoping that the writers will actually build on top of that, because that's going to open up a familiar but a very vulnerable channel in Sergeant Lance's psychology. You know, we know how he dealt with losing Sarah, right? So now bringing the possibility that she might still be alive, bringing that back into the picture, that's going to unfold so many things up here. If you add what happened to McKenna on top of that, then there's so many ways they could pull it out. He can fall into depression. He could go completely berserk, off the deep end, hell, he can even see his hunt for Oliver to be that much more personal because he's now lost a comrade hunting Oliver. Do you follow? All those things are potential avenues that the writers can take that character, and I'm just interested to see what they decide to do with it. I do think though that the idea that Sarah might be alive, I find that very interesting, and not just because it can open up a new subplot of the hunt for Sarah, but if Sarah was still alive and she allowed herself, whether knowingly or unknowingly, to be photographed by a tourist, that means she would have been around other people. Now, if that's the case, then why hasn't Sarah reached out to her family yet, if in fact that really is her? I'm much more interested in that. Like, if Sarah is still alive, and if in fact she has been in contact with other people, why hasn't she reached out to her family, and why hasn't she returned home? That's what I want to know. Because remember, she's been gone as long as Oliver has, 5 years, right? So why? And I'm curious to see where they decide to take that. I want to comment on the whole Thea Roy thing. Now we all know that Roy is going to be around a little bit longer. Well, those of us who keep up with the news of the show know that Roy is going to be around for a while because he's been signed on as a regular for season 2. And it makes sense. I will comment though that I think the whole scene with the shot and the kiss, completely forced, completely contrived. That was just there to try and just what's the term I'm looking for? Not stiff arm, not steamroll, but to kind of cram or to really stuff that romantic relationship that they want to develop between Thea and Roy. That was the shoehorn. That's the term I'm looking for. That whole scene about the shot with the kiss, that was just there to shoehorn that relationship to go where they wanted to go. I thought it was sloppy writing. Was it funny? Up until the kiss. That's when I was like, you fucking lost me. The needle thing was kind of funny, but then they lost me with that. So sorry guys. And I do want to comment about Laurel and her thing with Tommy. I will say this, and I don't know if it's just because this is how they're writing Laurel. She comes across to me as selfish. And let me tell you what I'm talking about. Her conversation with Tommy, where she's trying to figure out what's going on and Tommy can't tell her the truth. Instead of trying to pry and instead of trying to see behind what Tommy's telling her to try and figure out what's going on with him, she unloads all of her baggage upon Tommy. Whereas, by contrast, when you look at Tommy's last conversation with Oliver, despite everything that Tommy was feeling towards Oliver, at the end of the episode, at least he was able to see what Oliver was talking about and to see why Oliver did the way he did and to understand why Oliver kept that secret. He put his personal bullshit aside to empathize with his friend. Laurel did not do that. Instead of trying to empathize with what was going on with Tommy, she just unloaded her personal shit onto him and then tried to make him feel bad about not being there for her Bitch, you not there for him. Selfish. Selfish. That's all I'm saying. And you know what? I probably would not have even brought it up if it wasn't for that scene with Tommy and Oliver. If it wasn't for that conversation, I probably would have overlooked that scene between Laurel and Tommy. But the fact that the character in which that was done to was able to turn around and do the opposite for another character, that just brought the whole thing to light. And that's why I say it gotta be the way they're writing Laurel. And that's what's making me mad, because Laurel shouldn't sound like that. For a character in her position, for what she represents and all that type of jazz, for the role she plays in the series, she should not be the selfish type. That's why Thea's there. That's what Thea's character is for, not Laurel's. So y'all need to fix that. I ain't like that. And I guess my final thoughts on this episode, I guess I can comment about the flashback. Not too many thoughts about it, other than the fact that I like that we've gotten to the point now where Slade is much more trusting of Oliver, and there's more of a mutual camaraderie there than there was before. Slade is starting to warm up to Oliver, but I like how it's not because of personality, it's not because of traits, it's not because of it's not based off of anything emotional. It's still based off of a soldier's mentality. The fact that Slade has come to respect, or at least mutually acknowledge Oliver, because Oliver is proving himself in the field, because Oliver is doing things. He is being proactive, he is taking hold of the situation, and he is trying to use what tools he has, which for Oliver is a sense of cunning. It's a slight sense of trickery, but what Oliver lacks physically, he makes up for in wit and ingenuity. And so Slade is seeing that Oliver is making those attempts to use what he has in the field. So that's why Slade is acknowledging him. No type of fluffy, duffy, emotional bullshit, because that's completely outside of Slade's character. He would never do anything like that. No, it's all about the mission at hand and what's being done. And I like that they took that route. And it also creates a nice dynamic, because Oliver has the emotional attachment to Yao Fei, because Yao Fei saved his life, because Yao Fei helped him out, taught him things that he needed to know about the island. You see what I'm saying? So you have Yao Fei for Oliver's emotional attachment, and with Slade, it's much more of a harder, more concrete type of thing. It's a camaraderie type of thing, which is really cool. That I like that. So that being said, that's going to wrap up this week's Arrow review. I want to thank you all for joining me again this week. And in the comments below, let me know your thoughts on this week's episode, as well as some of your predictions, expectations, or theories on how you think the rest of the season will transpire. What to keep an eye out for later this week. Discussion of the week, OAW podcast, and then of course Vikings episode review. And with that being said, this has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, signing off, reminding you guys, Totems issue number 1 is still on sale. Links are in the description box below. And until next time, peace.